Chapter 419, That 4. The desert was immensely vast and sprawling, reaching as far as the eye could see. There was nothing but dense sand regardless of what direction one looked in, and the murderously hot sun pierced down with its gaze from above. This particular region was known for being one of the harshest deserts within the territory of Nahama. There were no nearby villages or oases. It was, as a result, a place untouched by tourists. To be precise, it was created to be like this on purpose. If nature did not provide an oasis, one could craft one, but there were compelling reasons for not doing so. A desert devoid of life was quite a bare sight. However, it was appealing to black wizards. In these barren depths, they could conduct their clandestine deeds without the risk of rumors or surveillance. Moreover, in the desert, the mysterious disappearance of a few souls wouldn't raise eyebrows. As such, this location was a prime land for the activities of black wizards. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the black wizards of Aroth were refined and sane in comparison, muttered Melkith Alhaya as she brushed the sand off her robes. Isn't that right? There were occasional disappearances and deaths in Aroth, but the Black Tower itself was always quite innocent when it came to such matters, wasn't it? She continued. Wizards from all corners of the continent gathered in the magical kingdom of Aroth. While magical experimentation on humans was heresy and forbidden, most wizards would readily break taboos when they were consumed by their curiosity. This disposition inevitably cast a shadow over Aroth. Pursuing forbidden knowledge wasn't just limited to black wizards. While some wizards only tampered with corpses or vagrants, the more depraved would even harm innocent citizens or tourists. However, those affiliated with the wizard towers couldn't cross such lines due to the strict oversight imposed on them by the towers. But here in this desert, there's nothing to regulate the wizards. It's not just the black wizards that are the problem. In the last few months, about a third of those I've buried in the sands were just ordinary wizards, said Melkith. Melkith had heard tales of Nahama's black wizard dungeons. These dungeons acted as miniature wizard towers, hosting a faction of wizards that rejected even guild affiliations. Yet she had never imagined the situation to be this dire. Perhaps it was an inevitable issue. Wizards, especially the higher-ranked ones, were engrossed in their magic. These black wizards were more like wizards than anyone else in essence. And such figures were more concerned with the advancement of their magic and their future studies than anything else. They couldn't care less about how wizards in other nations lived their lives. Anyway, speaking of which, I'm wandering so far from my home and... would you know where I'm from? Oh, of course you wouldn't. I never told you. Tata. I hail from the Aloes Kingdom up north. It's one of those tiny nations within the Anti-Demon Alliance. I'm pretty sure there's no one as renowned and skilled as me throughout the history of the Aloes Kingdom. Melkith chattered on tirelessly. Anyway, here I am, the great Melkith Alhaya, wandering this far-flung desert all alone, far, far away from home. I'm facing the scorching heat by day and freezing cold by night, confronting wicked wizards with their vile deeds. And why aren't you saying anything? I am listening even if I do not respond. The one that responded was a wind spirit that had been floating around Melkith. Eugene Lionheart was still lingering in Lahanjar with Molan. He was getting reports from Melkith in this matter through the wind spirit. Really? You're not lying, are you? Eugene, I feel the weight of loneliness lately. Perhaps I'm learning the essence of solitude in this vast desert. Continued Melkith. Don't say something so nasty, came the response. Nasty? Is it so off-putting to you that I confess my loneliness? Said Melkith. What loneliness are you talking about? You do just fine having lots of fun by yourself, Lady Melkith. Even when you're alone, you have lots of people to talk to, explained Eugene. What nonsense is that? I have many people to talk with even when I'm alone, retorted Melkith. You have the spirits, do you not? Challenged Eugene. Hey, do you think spirits are humans? Spirits are spirits, Melkith retorted. That statement feels somewhat prejudiced against spirits. Are you suggesting that spirits aren't worthy conversation partners, Lady Melkith? Such a belief might cause friction with Tempest. Eugene commented. No, that's not what I meant. In my view, spirits are superior, more evolved entities than mere humans. It's beyond me to initiate a conversation with them. I have to wait for the spirits to reach out first. Melkith attempted to rectify her words in haste. So, please let Tempest know how I feel, will you? It's really bizarre. The more I think about it, I'm sure there must be a communication link between Tempest and me. Yet no matter how often I call, There's no response from Tempest's end. Do you think our connection's been severed? Questioned Malkuth, confused. Well, no, that's not the case. Tempest just prefers. Reserved? Silent? Tempest would prefer a taciturn companion, responded Eugene. That would be me, Malkuth immediately answered. Lady Malkuth, Tempest says it's exhausting to answer when you call without rest, Eugene explained. Wouldn't regular dialogues enhance our rapport? Malkuth asked. Tempest believes you should first focus on nurturing your aptitude as a spirit companion, Eugene answered. Why does Tempest communicate only with you despite being able to converse with me? Malkuth inquired. Tempest says he is worried that direct communication might overwhelm you, Lady Malkuth. Collapsing from overload in this desert would be disastrous, responded Eugene. Oh, so he's worried about me. Malkuth shouted in glee while hopping around in excitement. Well, if that's the case, so be it. You're still with Sir Molan, aren't you? Once this report is concluded, I'll return to duel with Sir Molan, answered Eugene. Are you trying to tell me to wrap this up quickly? How very audacious, considering I'm enduring this wretched desert at someone's behest, Malkuth grumbled. It was a bargain, remember? Eugenie's retort was as sharp as a blade, and it left Malkuth speechless for a moment. Yet this audacious spirit wizard did not hesitate to pucker her lips in retort. Yes. Right. A bargain. How splendid. I'm truly envious, Malkuth drawled, making her sarcasm pretty obvious. Do you have no sense of decorum at all? Eugene asked. Nope. None at all. Worrying about such things is just too tiring, responded Malkuth. Well. Eugene heaved a heavy sigh. After a short moment, the wind spirit underwent a sudden transformation. Malkuth stared at it with alarm. While the wind spirit retained its fledgling appearance, the aura swirling around it, born from the winds, was overwhelmingly majestic. I implore you, the spirit of the wind issued forth in a stern voice. Kaya! Malkuth let out a joyous exclamation and leaped with elation on the spot. That voice. It was the voice of Tempest, the king of the wind spirits. It was a voice she hadn't heard for months despite calling out to him daily. Hearing his encouragement caused any and all grievances Malkuth harbored to vanish instantly. If Tempest requests it, who am I to deny? Malkuth declared happily. She heard no further response. Tempest, having heeded Eugenie's request and encouraging Malkuth despite not wanting to, shut out the world once again. Eugene went to duel with Molan as he did every day, and Christina and Anise followed the two of them to patch them up from any injuries. And Sienna? She was busy with her days in Arath. Malkuth, on the other hand, roamed the desert. By day it scorched and by night it chilled. The desert was a wretched place where all could only see endless sand. Yet Malkuth felt no discomfort. To an archwizard, the only environmental hindrance was the concentration of mana. Unless one was in an extremely special environment, mana existed everywhere. An archwizard could conjure water even in a land void of a single droplet. Furthermore, Malkuth wasn't just any archwizard but also a master of spirit magic. Having contracted with the Earth Spirit King, sinking sands posed her no threat. Her only concern would be sustenance. But Malkuth Alhaya was a marvel. She could eat crustaceans that dwelled beneath the sands without a change in expression. This was a testament to her impressive appetite and ability to adapt to her environment. This way, a voice called out. How many are there? Asked Malkuth. Just over 50, came the reply. The dungeon master? Malkuth inquired. By my estimate, the 7th circle. The average for their wizards is the 5th circle, the voice answered. Quite the high-level dungeon. A black wizard of the 7th circle. Considering their latent skills and power, it should be safe to say that they'd nearly match an archwizard, Malkuth said thoughtfully. Burials. It was Janos, the Earth Spirit King, who inquired. Although she had rambled on to Eugene about solitude in the desert, she had never truly been lonely on her quest. Spirits were her friends and conversation partners. If it were just mid-level wizards, maybe. But with an almost archwizard among them, it won't be possible to easily bury them. They'll likely burst out and cause a ruckus, said Malkuth with a click of her tongue. A dungeon of wizards would be armed with formidable defenses against external attacks. Throw in an archwizard, and they could resist even Janos's burial attacks. Even if no one traversed this desert, launching spells above ground would draw too much attention. It was quite likely that the Sultan had received reports of her actions considering what she had been up to, but there had been no response until now. The famed assassins of Nahama had not shown up to assassinate her, nor had she faced any attacks from the Sandmancers of Nahama either. Still, it was prudent to tread carefully. Somewhat surprisingly, Melkith was well aware of this fact. "There are magic traps just up ahead," warned Janos. "I noticed," Melkith responded. She had successfully discerned them even before Janos' warning. The moment she set foot in the domain, the desert would transform into a treacherous quicksand and threaten to drag Melkith down to the dungeon below. But even knowing this, Melkith did not falter in her steps. Her destination was the subterranean dungeon, and her mission was to eradicate the black wizards within or those who sought to become such wizards. Initially, she pondered if she really needed to kill them. Would it not suffice to merely dismantle the dungeons instead? But Melkith did not hesitate to bury all the black wizards upon witnessing the actual state of the dungeons. Of all the dungeons she had decimated, which numbered over 10, only 3 managed to escape complete annihilation. The wizards of the remaining dungeons had proven to be deserving of their fate. "I do understand," Melkith muttered as she pulled her robe's hood over her head. "Research can be captivating, even exciting. But shouldn't they adhere to basic principles when performing experiments on other humans? And there are myriad types of magical experiments involving humans. Why do all the wizards of the desert dungeons shoot that way?" Contractor Levin, the Spirit King of Lightning, spoke. "Have you ever wished to conduct an experiment or research involving humans?" "I have," Melkith replied without hesitation. "A body that doesn't excrete regardless of what one eats." Levin wasn't sure what to make of that. "A body that doesn't get fat regardless of what one eats," Melkith continued passionately. "Contractor, what are you?" Levin started, only to be interrupted by Melkith as she further explained. "How convenient is that? Not just wizards either. What if everyone gets to have such bodies? Wouldn't that basically be utopia? Now, that's what I would call proper research to furnish the world to be a better place." "Well, have you never pondered about research to become immortal or something similar?" asked Levin cautiously. "Immortality? Nah," Melkith scoffed. "Death is a part of nature's cycle. One should go when their time comes and the others need to let them go." As she spoke, she began weaving various spells. She was preparing to storm the dungeon unarmored. She knew she didn't worry about her body exploding since she assumed the sands were a trap designed to capture test subjects. However, one could never be too careful. Continuing her soliloquy as she cast her shields, she opined, "If everyone became immortal, the world would be overwhelmed with humans with no space left to even walk. Besides, it's not always better to live longer. Sometimes being able to embrace death when one desires is a blessing." "I concur," came a sudden response. "Kaya." The voice caused Melkith to jump and reflexively shoot out a spell. Fush. Ifrit's flames engulfed the area behind her. "Startling you was my fault, though unintentional. But wasn't that retaliation a bit excessive? Attacking with the Spirit King of Fire, no less. Most would have been reduced to ashes after being struck by a fire like that." A figure could be seen as their voice floated over. "What's going on?" Melkith shouted. "Is it wise to cause such a ruckus in this situation?" asked the figure. "How could I not?" Melkith retorted. She was so startled that every hair of hers was standing on end. Melkith eyed the man with a wary gaze as she stepped back rapidly. It was Balzac Ludbeth, the Black Tower Master. A year ago, Balzac had departed first after the tribal war in the vast Samar forest. However, he vanished without ever reaching Arath. Since it wasn't any ordinary wizard but a tower master who had suddenly disappeared, both Arath and the Wizards Guild employed various methods to track him down. However, all efforts proved fruitless. Only rumors swirled about the disappearance of Balzac. Some whispered that the wise Sienna of Arath had slain the Black Tower Lord. Others claimed he was obliterated in the power struggle within Helmuth. The truth, though, was a mystery to all. Melkith didn't particularly concern herself with this matter either. Although Balzac Ludbeth was a fellow tower master, he wasn't exactly a close friend. They had rarely been involved directly with each other, and while they had known each other for decades, their first joint endeavor had been the war in the Samar forest. Melkith believed he wouldn't have met some trivial end. After all, the Black Tower Master was a suspicious figure in both name and appearance. It was hard to imagine such an individual perishing unceremoniously. And had he not stated that his ambition as a wizard was to become a legend? His ambition had been to become the greatest wizard in the world and to etch his name in the annals of magical history for centuries, just like the wise Sienna. No wizard with the stature and prowess of Balzac Ludbeth, who seriously dreamt of becoming a legend, would die a meaningless death. "Why are you here?" Melkith finally asked. "I might ask the same White Tower Master. Why are you here?" Balzac replied while staring at Melkith with a calm expression. Then with a slight smirk Balzac shook his head. "I can guess without hearing it directly from you. It must be because of Sir Eugenie's request." Melkith didn't respond. "I don't know exactly what kind of deal took place between you two, but White Tower Master, I can't think of any reason you'd personally challenge the dungeons of the Black Wizards or wage war on the entire realm of Nahama. But I couldn't say the same for Sir Eugene," deduced Balzac. "Not at all. Eugene has nothing to do with this. I'm doing this all on my own," responded Melkith. "Were you so deeply indebted to Sir Eugene that you'd take the responsibility?" questioned Balzac. "It's presumptuous and disrespectful to make assumptions, Black Tower Master. Rather than making baseless claims, why don't you answer my question? What are you doing here?" Melkith asked once more. "What am I doing?" "To answer that specifically would be challenging, but recently I've been assisting you," answered Balzac. "What?" Melkith was dumbfounded at the unexpected reply. "White Tower Master, I've discreetly dealt with the bodies you've left behind, cleaned up the things you didn't manage to in the dungeons, silenced the Black Wizards you spared, as well as the hostages you released back to the city. I've even dealt with the assassins sent to capture you," he continued. "What?" Melkith was genuinely shocked. "In the past few months alone you've cleared over 10 dungeons. Did you really think the Sultan wouldn't react?" "Balzac. That's not what I'm asking," retorted Melkith. A spark of anger flashed in Melkith's eyes. An archwizard was an apex existence who always searched for something greater. Her overwhelming aura weighed down on Balzac. "The Black Wizards I spared, the hostages I returned to the city. You interfered?" she asked. Melkith was enraged by this revelation. Those she had deemed unnecessary to kill, those she had spared, and the hostages lucky enough to escape with their lives. If Balzac had acted against them of his own accord, Melkith wouldn't restrain her wrath. "Do I appear so wicked to you?" Balzac wore a look of genuine dismay as he questioned. "You said you silenced them," responded Melkith. "I merely silenced their tongues, White Tower Master. I did not harm them as you suspect," answered Balzac. "Is that so?" Melkith said. She swiftly calmed herself moments before letting her anger erupt. Without another word, she turned around and began heading towards the dungeon entrance that resembled a treacherous antlion pit. Balzac paused for a moment as he watched Melkith move away. Then he followed her. "You won't inquire further?" he asked. "Given your nature, even if I asked you wouldn't answer." "Why would I bother then?" said Melkith. Balzac's reply was non-committal. "I was concerned since I screamed and used my magic, but seems like you didn't surprise me without thinking," commented Melkith. Balzac's magic was intertwined with the trap. Thanks to that, the Black Wizards of the dungeon failed to notice Melkith above them. "But here's my question. All this while you've been handling matters behind the scenes. Why make an appearance now? Isn't it a tad too late for cautionary advice?" asked Melkith. "I meant to advise you against meddling with this dungeon," answered Balzac. "Why?" Melkith asked. "The dungeon master here is a Black Wizard named Arask. Skill and character aside, the demon he's contracted with is quite violent," responded Balzac. "Who is it?" asked Melkith. "Harperon, holding the title of Count and ranked 57th in Helmuth. He's a greedy demon. White Tower Master, if you were to attack and kill the dungeon master, Harperon would be enraged." "All the better," Melkith grinned broadly as she responded. "What I need is precisely such a fierce reaction." "You mean what Sir Eugene desires?" said Balzac after a pause. "Oh, what I need. Why do you keep mentioning Eugene, who isn't even here?" "You're so strange," said Melkith while dismissively waving her hand. Suddenly the antlion trap beneath them activated. The sand began swirling towards its center. Melkith allowed himself to be pulled in by the sand as she turned to look back at Balzac. "So what will you do?" she asked. "I'd rather not confront them directly," he answered. "Will you wait here then?" Melkith challenged. With a deep sigh, Balzac stepped into the antlion pit. Melkith smirked and raised her hands high as if she had been expecting this response. "Let's go," he said. With arms still raised, Melkith plunged beneath the desert sands. Chapter 420. That 5. Bonus image. What was Balzac hiding? The man's enigmatic behavior had been suspicious from the start. He had vanished into thin air without saying a word to anyone, as if he had been swallowed by the desert. No one knew what Balzac had been up to for the past year, why he was in the desert, and why he had been cleaning up the mess left by Melkith. "Look," Melkith started after a brief period of contemplation. Hesitantly, she began to speak with utmost caution. "Sometimes, the fact that you love someone can hurt them." "What?" Balzac responded, clearly puzzled. "I'm saying that no matter what you do, I cannot reciprocate your feelings. You're not lacking in abilities or looks, so you should find someone else that's better." "No, that's practically impossible. There can't be anyone better suited than me in this world." "What are you talking about?" asked Balzac. For once, Balzac's usual thin smile was replaced by genuine confusion. "Are you feigning ignorance because you're embarrassed? There's no point." "I've already noticed your feelings," continued Melkith. "I asked what you meant," repeated Balzac. "When you think about it logically and rationally, the conclusion is crystal clear. You love me. What matters is since when," answered Melkith. "Stop it," said Balzac. "It must be since Samar Forest. The first time I displayed the might of infinity force, even I had to admit that I was pretty damn impressive." "You must have fallen for me right then," continued Melkith. "I asked you to stop," repeated Balzac. "First love. You must have been unaccustomed to such devastating emotions. You ran away because you couldn't face me in a wrath. You decided to hide yourself in this desert to try and forget me, but oh, such cruel fate. You happened to run into me in the desert by chance," concluded Melkith. The ridiculous argument made Balzac unsure of what to say. "Let me be clear. This is not fate, so don't get the wrong idea. Nonetheless, you couldn't leave me alone. Out of love and worry, you followed me like a creepy stalker." Melkith continued fabricating her story. "That's not true," Balzac interrupted, his cheek twitching as if spasming. "I swear on my being I've never harbored such feelings for you." "There's no need to be ashamed," consoled Melkith. "Neither in the past, present, nor future will there be such a thing," Balzac asserted. "Do you really not like me?" asked Melkith. "Yes," Balzac declared in finality. The response was sharp, but Melkith still looked skeptical. However, instead of pressing further, she flicked her finger towards a wall. Crack! A bolt of lightning shot from her fingertip and sliced through the wall entirely. With a growl, a black wizard tumbled to the floor. He had been hiding his presence against the wall using magic until Melkith electrocuted him. Having shot the lightning, Melkith blew on her finger and scanned the surroundings. She had found herself in a dungeon after falling into an antlion trap. The first thing she encountered were 14 black wizards. They had come out to capture any victims who fell through the trap but were thrown into disarray when Melkith landed unharmed. Melkith was quicker than any of them. Moreover, one of her contracted spirits, Levin, the Lightning Spirit King, was unmatched in speed even by any other Spirit King. That made it impossible for the black wizards to block Levin's lightning with their fifth circle defensive magic. In the blink of an eye, the situation was completely under Melkith's control. She had probed Balzac while requesting Janos to scout the dungeon's exact layout. However, she was still unable to shake her suspicions. She continued to cast sidelong glances at Balzac. "White Tower Head," Balzac called out. It was clear that he had noticed the meaning behind her gaze. His face was still devoid of any smile as he met Melkith's eyes and said, "I too possess eyes to see and a mind to think. If they function properly, you'd have no choice but to fall for me," countered Melkith. "It's because they function so well that I absolutely do not harbor such feelings for you," retorted Balzac. He was once again drawing clear boundaries. Balzac felt somewhat aggrieved. This was not the first time such a misunderstanding had occurred. Balzac had previously been misinterpreted for showing kindness. He still couldn't forget being asked by Eugene if he was gay. "Melkith," a voice rang out in her head. The earth trembled. "I have prioritized segregating the hostages on the other floors," informed the voice. "What about the workshop?" asked Melkith. "There's no need for you to check it personally." Janos's voice was level, and Melkith's eyes grew cold upon hearing his response. It was clear from his response that Janos was being considerate of Melkith. There would be no need for Melkith to check personally. "Bring it down," commanded Melkith. "Understood," answered Janos. Rumbly. The dungeon began to shake violently. The massive underground workshop started to collapse. Black wizards cried out in terror in the midst of their experiments as they tried to resist the collapse. However, the wrath of the Earth Spirit King had completely filled the dungeon. It wasn't something a mere few dozen black wizards could withstand. "Where's the dungeon master?" asked Melkith. "In the deepest part of the dungeon. I can feel a strong presence there," answered Janos. "Stronger than me?" questioned Melkith. "I'm about 25% of your strength. Perhaps even weaker than that," came the response. The question was clearly loaded. It was aimed at boosting Melkith's own ego. Janos didn't particularly want to indulge her grandiosity, but he had to consider that the atmosphere had turned frosty with the victims of the workshop in mind. His insane contractor, while a maniac, was a good person at heart. "A spirit wizard contracted with me. Ifrit couldn't possibly be weaker than mere black wizards." Ifrit joined in on the conversation. "Fush." Melkith's surroundings suddenly swirled with flames. As soon as Ifrit's flames appeared around her, Melkith quickly clasped her hands together and rubbed them in a sycophantic manner. "Oh my, absolutely. Oh great Ifrit. Someone contracted with you could never be weaker than black wizards who haven't even reached the 8th circle," said Melkith. "Contractor. Wield my flames for judgment here. I, Ifrit, shall never forgive those vile black wizards who worship the Demon King," declared Ifrit. "Yes, I understand," responded Melkith. "The wicked deeds of black wizards are unceasing, even in this era of peace. They are flawed from their very existence. Is it tolerable for humans to sacrifice their own kind and defile their dignity as they transform their kind into monsters?" shouted Ifrit. "Indeed, O great Ifrit. All black wizards are bastards. They are mere dogs who have forsaken their path. Grant me the power to incinerate those bastards," Melkith said passionately. Melkith was well aware of Ifrit's fiery temperament and his hatred for black wizards. He had refused to form a contract with Melkith even after much pleading, but had readily agreed when she had promised to kill Edmund in exchange. "Not all black wizards are like that," said Balzac from the side. "Oh no. Right, so you say you are a good black wizard. Right. Melkith drawled in a mocking tone. Anyone would clench their fists upon hearing such taunts, but surprisingly, Balzac looked at Melkith with a pitying gaze as he asked, "Why do you carry on like this?" "Why? Because you're suspicious, that's why." "So why were you in the desert?" countered Melkith. "I was simply training as a wizard, nothing more," answered Balzac. "Why here of all places?" Melkith demanded an answer while raising her fist. "Fush." A crimson flame wrapped around her hand. "If you don't give a proper answer, it'll be fire punch time." Her punch was hastily thrown and clumsy, but the flame that surged forth showcased a terrifying force. Defensive magic raised by the black wizards at the front, as well as other various offensive spells, were completely annihilated by Ifrit's flame. 1-2. Melkith unleashed a combination of punches in succession. They caused a thunderous roar as the flame of the left punch engulfed the black wizards. They screamed and resisted against the expanse of flame in front of them, but Ifrit's fire consumed them completely and turned them into ashes. "Do you want to feel the burning sensation of my fire punch?" asked Melkith. "Is this a threat?" Balzac asked tentatively. "Black Tower Master, depending on what you do, I can be either an angel or a demon." "In other words, I am both an angel and a demon," Melkith stated. "Ah yes," Balzac answered with a reluctant face as he looked ahead. Until moments ago, the corridor before them had been lined with dozens of black wizards. The fiery punches unleashed by Melkith had turned everything to cinder. Despite the name Fire Punch and her awkward stance, the power was indeed formidable. "She is the strongest wizard among us except for the wise Sienna," Balzac thought. He had no choice but to admit it. She was a master of spirit magic and an archwizard. She was contracted simultaneously with 3 spirit kings. Melkith El-Haya was indeed a contender for the title of the strongest wizard of the current age. "I cannot divulge what I have been doing in this desert, White Tower Master. It is a secret. As a fellow wizard, I trust you would not pry further into matters that are meant to be kept secret," said Balzac. "Fine, I can respect research. But why here of all places?" You have your own study in the Black Tower, don't you? Asked Melkith. I find myself under the watchful gaze of many, Balzac responded. He adjusted his glasses as he spoke. Surveillance, was it? Melkith eyed him with suspicion as she walked forward. Even now, Balzac was cloaked in powerful stealth magic. He was clearly conscious of the black wizards and their contracted demons. Especially Amelia Mervyn. She has been overtly surveilling and targeting me, continued Balzac. Thanks to the letter you wrote, Eugene could escape from Amelia Mervyn's clutches, right? Aren't you two on friendly terms? Asked Melkith. Not at all. I once provided her with copies of texts from the Black Tower and Akron because of her interest in them, answered Balzac. Balzac's calm demeanor didn't waver as he spoke, while Melkith's eyes widened in shock. In return, Amelia Mervyn agreed to honor 2 of my requests. The letter I gave to Sir Eugene was one of those, explained Balzac. The tower. And you leaked Akron's archives? Shouted Melkith angrily. It's a secret, responded Balzac. Execution by hanging, roared Melkith. White Tower Master, I didn't take you for someone who'd be so meticulous about such things, commented Balzac. Even I have principles that I uphold, shouted Melkith furiously. I understand I have done wrong. But had I not done so, I wouldn't have been able to transfer my request to Sir Eugene. Without it, he would have never escaped unscathed from Merwyn's grasp at that time, countered Balzac. Well, right. Melkith nodded reluctantly while biting her lips. Amelia Mervyn is a formidable foe, especially after becoming the new staff of incarceration. She knows of my involvement in Edmund's demise and would want to capture me to extract various pieces of information. And it's not just her. All black wizards of the Black Tower are eyes for other demons, declared Balzac. That makes sense. Black wizards contract with demons after all, responded Melkith. Yes. And so, I find myself in a rather precarious position. While being contracted with the Demon King of Incarceration, I am on amicable terms with the hero, said Balzac. I don't think Eugene would agree, Melkith countered immediately. At least I am not antagonistic with the hero, Balzac said after a pause. So far I've managed well under surveillance, but as the political climate shifts, I know that the scrutiny will become more blatant. I will have to expect direct interference. Moreover, the wise Sienna has returned to Arath. Isn't her return reason enough for me to leave? She is not fond of black wizards after all, he finished explaining. I don't like them either, Melkith added. Yes. And that's why I have settled here in the Nahama Desert, concluded Balzac. Settling in the desert while being wary of Amelia Mervyn is suspicious, Melkith pointed out. It is darkest under the lamp. Besides, Amelia Mervyn has left the desert, hasn't she? Countered Balzac. He paused before lightly tapping Melkith's shoulder. The dark power of Harperon is growing. It seemed the dungeon master here realized he couldn't handle the enemy and had formed a new contract. Really? Melkith asked. Yes. He must have already pledged his soul and added other conditions to his contract. This escalation means he's now a threat. Retreating might be. Balzac was cut short. No. I have business with that Harperon, Melkith said with a stubborn look on her face. White Tower Master. You didn't even know who Harperon was until, Balzac began with an exasperated expression, only to be interrupted yet again. Didn't I? I knew, came Melkith's confident reply. Balzac's jaw muscles twitched. He said nothing more. Instead, he quietly adjusted his glasses and stepped back. Truth be told, of course, Melkith didn't know who Harperon was. How could she know the name of a demon of such an ambiguous rank? 57th? But it was true she had business with Harperon. I want to get this over with quickly, Melkith thought. She knew Eugene's goal, destroying the dungeon to weaken Amelia's forces. He sought to provoke Nahama and in doing so to draw out the demons of Helmuth. But destroying all the dungeons in this vast desert was too much trouble for Melkith. Moreover, even if Melkith stirred up Nahama, the Sultan would not dare take drastic action. Then the only sure way was to draw out the demons. If the demons of Helmuth crossed over to Nahama, the Sultan could no longer maintain an ambiguous stance. Should things progress that way, Melkith could return to Arath without further suffering in the desert. Since you've pried so much into my affairs, may I ask you a few things in return? Asked Balzac. You said that Harperon's dark power is growing. Why are you trying to ask me a question in such a dangerous and tense situation? Countered Melkith. You're not even tense, Balzac pointed out. Because he's weaker than me. But anyone else would be nervous. So don't ask any questions, declared Malkuth. Balzac just stared at her silently with an evidently irritated expression. It's a joke. Go ahead and ask away, Black Tower Master. You can make such a face. I never knew. I'm seeing it for the first time. Oh my, when you glare like that it's quite fierce. But if it's about how you feel about me that's a bit, said Malkuth. Sir Eugene, Balzac interrupted. His jaw muscle twitched once more as he asked after a brief pause, is he well? Probably. I don't really know what he's up to, responded Malkuth. It was a lie. Malkuth was well aware that Eugene was currently undertaking training in Lehanjar. But she had no intention of disclosing that to Balzac. He still did not trust him. I hear Lady Sienna is in Arath. However, there are no rumors about Eugene, Balzac probed. He's probably doing something in his mansion, responded Malkuth. Can't you tell me honestly? Asked Balzac in exasperation. I said I don't know, didn't I? But you're very suspicious. Even if I knew something, what would you do with that information, huh? Tell the Demon King so he can kill Eugene, accused Malkuth. I was just curious, said Balzac. If this is going to cause a misunderstanding, I won't ask further. He was interrupted by a sinister wind surging from the staircase. The steps leading down undulated as if they were alive. Balzac stopped speaking and swiftly retreated. Hee hee. A chilling laughter echoed through the space. It was the master of this dungeon and the head of the Luos school. He was a black-robed wizard with a turban and a long beard. The black wizard levitated off the ground and ascended the stairs. I've heard rumors of Aratha's White Tower Master Malkuth El-Haya. As of late, you've been recklessly attacking dungeons without cause, stated the black wizard. So you've heard of me, said Malkuth. Indeed. Arrogant wizard of Arath. Your power may be commendable, but your human legacy ends here today, Malkuth El-Haya. You have chosen the wrong dungeon to invade, stated the black wizard. The black wizard lifted his arms and a dark magical force began to converge around him, forming a massive circle. Reveling in the omnipotence granted by the power he had obtained at the sacrifice of his disciples, he exclaimed, I've always wanted to confront a Tower Master of Arath. Never did I dream that today would be the day I fulfill that wish. Fear not. I shall not kill you. I shall inflict upon you a fate worse than death. From today onwards. You talk too much. Malkuth snapped. She thrust her fist forward, mixing Ifrit's firepower with Levin's lightning. Fire punch. A resounding boom pierced through the supposedly invincible barrier of dark power. The black wizard coughed up blood after becoming overwhelmed by the force. What is this? The black wizard gasped. I am Malkuth El-Haya. The staircase ceased its writhing. Janos had taken control of the land. The Earth Spirit King provided a stable footing as Malkuth wished. She stepped onto the platform and leaped to hover above the black wizard's head. Her kick was meticulously positioned. Malkuth's body was enveloped in lightning and crackled with energy. The flame on her toes drew a scarlet line. Thunderbolt. Kick. Her kick exploded through the sorcerer's form and shattered him completely, leaving not a shred of flesh as his form was consumed utterly by fire. Malkuth stood at a distance and shook the ash off her clothes before spinning around. Come and meet your death, Earg. Malkuth had intended to deliver a dramatic line, but instead she yelped in shock and leaped backward. The ashes that had burned away did not scatter and disappear. Instead they swirled together and coalesced into the face of some monster. Calm down, contractor. That is the demon's spirit. Take a deep breath, Malkuth. You dare. A demon dares to raise its head in front of Ifrit? The three spirit kings each showed their distinct reactions. Their reactions cast a definite influence on the area surrounding Malkuth. The earth quaked, lightning crackled, and flames danced. In their midst stood Malkuth. She may not have intended it, but her figure was the very embodiment of a grand master of spirit magic. The sight was awe-inspiring and formidable. Oh! Harperon was ranked 57th among the demons. Though it was a rank updated after half of the demons in the top 100 had been slaughtered the previous year, the 57th rank was still acknowledged as a high-ranking demon even in Helmuth. Even though Harperon had descended only as a spirit, he felt awe at the sight of the Grand Master of Spirit Magic. Remarkable. A master of spirit magic contracted with multiple spirit kings. I thought you wielded only a fraction of their power, yet you draw forth the full might of the spirit kings, Harperon said. The demon chuckled to himself. One of his dungeons had been completely destroyed. It meant that he was now without one source of regular offerings. As its master, he naturally felt anger, but at the same time Melkith's power was undeniably impressive. So he addressed the archwizard in front of him. I am Count Harperon, ranked 57th of the demons. Melkith El-Haya. You have destroyed my... Idiot. Melkith didn't let him finish, raising her middle fingers defiantly. You got beaten by a human, you fucking idiot. Boasting about being ranked 57, you pathetic fool. Vermin. Stupid. What's there to boast about when you have 56 above you? Melkith taunted. The ashes forming Harperon's visage quivered and shook. You're so ugly. Even the scorpions of the desert are better looking than you, you filthy mongrel. Get that hideous face out of my sight. It's disgusting just to look at. Melkith's jibes were scathing. Melkith El-Haya, Harperon snarled. The ash began to crumble. They couldn't contain his fury. I will kill you. Go ahead, try it, idiot. Melkith challenged. I will come to kill you, Harperon growled. Whoa. In response to Harperon's parting threat, Melkith screamed in triumph. Chapter 421. That 6. After hearing the tale, Eugene was left unable to manage his expression, a task he had thought himself immune to by now, especially when it came to Melkith. He shook his head with a heavy sigh. Christina raised her head and peered at Eugenie's face while carefully aligning his twisted limbs. Oh, it's okay, I'm not in pain, he assured. However, his appearance suggested anything but. Both his arms were cleanly broken and his right ankle and left knee were twisted in unnatural directions. The sight alone was enough to send shivers down one's spine. In fact, Rhaenyra had already created some distance from Eugene while rubbing her own limbs. She was clearly affected by the sight. Eugene composed his features and emotions. With a crunch and snap, Christina corrected the alignment of his leg. With a twist, the joint was fixed back into its place with a gruesome noise. Rhaenyra let out a pained gasp while clutching her knees. Mare had been observing the situation with her eyes half squinted. She suddenly felt a surge of mischief and began to shake Rhaenyra's knee. Crack. Crack crack. Kaya. Kaya. Mare imitated the sound of breaking bones while Rhaenyra screamed in terror. Amidst the chaos, Christina continued her meticulous work on Eugene's bones. Christina wasn't just relying on her miracles to heal Eugene. Instead, she paid attention to Eugenie's every shattered bone fragment and torn muscle fiber. She knew that this delicate adjustment would aid in improving her skills. Are you even listening? That bastard. What's his name? Right, Harperon. Rank 57. That bastard said he's coming to kill me. A voice was heard in Eugenie's head. Eugene didn't have the capacity to reply at this point. Isn't this enough already? A demon is coming to personally kill me. The voice enunciated every word carefully to make a point. I was thinking about it too, and I don't think he's going to come alone. Think about all the black wizards I've killed until now. Feels kind of weird to say it out loud, but I'm sure all of them would just love to see me dead. Don't you think they'll come together? Lady Melkith, said Eugene. He wiggled his toes, testing the sensation in his now properly aligned leg. You're remarkable. That was all he could manage to say. The matter of collapsing dungeons or burying black wizards alive wasn't a concern for him. He wasn't worried about Melkith regarding such matters. Apart from her being half crazy, Melkith's prowess was beyond question. In all honesty, if Melkith summoned all 3 spirit kings to battle, Eugene felt he might need to draw the moonlight sword. As such, he didn't think Melkith would face any peril in the desert, especially in Amelia Merwin's absence. The fact that Melkith had confronted and defeated a black wizard contracted with a demon of the 57th rank wasn't surprising, considering her abilities. Rather, it's natural, Eugene thought. He couldn't help but marvel at Melkith's audacity. She had provoked the spirit form of the summoned demon as a weak piece of shit and a piglet. It wasn't anything short of remarkable. In this era, only Melkith could dare to use such brash and vulgar taunts. Right? I'm impressive, aren't I? Melkith said. Yes. Even Tempest is impressed, answered Eugene. Of course. So Eugene, can I return to Aroth now, huh? Inquired Malkuth. No, you can't, came the answer. Why? Malkuth's outcry made it evident about the injustice she was suffering. If Harperon has said he's coming to kill you, what will we do if you're in Aroth? Eugene asked. What's the issue with that? Questioned Malkuth. Lady Sienna is currently in Aroth. No matter how furious Harperon gets, he won't attack Aroth, stated Eugene. Eugene recalled Harperon's name from memories long past. Even then, the demon had been well known, and it was a surprise he had survived to this age. Eugene wasn't worried. Rank 57? High in objective terms, but, as Malkuth said, was it something to boast about when there were 56 others above you? Eugene also believed that most high-ranking demons of this era survived only because they had never encountered Hamel of Extermination 3 centuries ago. Sometimes, enemies offered more precise and reliable evaluations than allies. Eugene preferred the chillingly cool moniker Hamel of Extermination to the stupid Hamel. It was much more accurate. Don't you care? Aren't you worried about your big sis? Those monstrous demons said they're coming to kill me, shouted Malkuth indignantly. Even if they come determined, it would be difficult, probably impossible, to kill you, Lady Malkuth. After all, you're the most extraordinary master of spirit magic, the greatest in history. There is no one who can compare to you, said Eugene. Now was the time to lavish praise upon Malkuth. And it wasn't exactly a lie either. That is absolutely, completely true. But you know, Eugene, I'm a bit worried, admitted Malkuth. What's worrying you? Asked Eugene. You know, the Black Tower Master, that guy is so sly. I told him to leave once he was done and he just took off suspiciously fast. He's so dubious, responded Malkuth. He left because you told him to, so how is that suspicious? Asked Eugene. You shouldn't think he just went away. He must be lurking somewhere. I'm sure he's spying on me, said Malkuth. You're being too harsh on the Black Tower Master, Eugene said. Yet he agreed that Balzac was suspicious. Sure, even if Eugene could let it slide, the reason he left Aroth. What was he researching in the desert? Should I leave him be? Or should I mark him for now? Eugene contemplated. Balzac had been helpful in many ways. Despite his suspicious nature, based on past experiences, Eugene judged Balzac to be a decent person. But ultimately he was a black wizard contracted with the Demon King of Incarceration. Even if Balzac wasn't a black wizard who needed to be killed by Eugene's standards, Eugene opposing the Demon King of Incarceration meant that someday he would have to fight Balzac. Considering that, disrupting his deep-seated research now might help diminish Balzac's strength in the future. You didn't just send him off, I gather? Eugene inquired with an undertone of doubt. Huh? What do you take me for? Came Malkuth's smug voice. Naturally, I sent a spirit to tail Balzac. I'm not naive. Then keep an eye on the Black Tower Master. But go easy on the dungeon raids, advised Eugene. Go easy? Malkuth asked. Let's tone it down. Maybe one raid every fortnight? That should suffice, suggested Eugene. And what am I to do in the meantime? Sunbathe and tan in the desert. Screamed Malkuth in a shrill voice. Surely that country has more than just deserts. I've been there a few times in the past myself. The cities are quite lively if I remember correctly, responded Eugene. Hey, excuse me, Eugene. Did you not hear anything I said earlier? The Sultan's after me. He's already sent assassins. Several times. Shouted Malkuth, now sounding angry. Aren't you a master of spirit magic? Are you scared of mere assassins, Lady Malkuth? When I was 19 I took care of those very assassins with ease. And with your magical prowess, you could easily alter your appearance, countered Eugene. Eugenie's limbs were mended to perfection as the conversation went on. Eugene continued to persuade Malkuth as he moved each finger to test their function. Please, Lady Malkuth, you're the only one I can ask for this favor. You wouldn't go back on your word now, would you? He said. He added a subtle nudge of pressure to the plea, and Malkuth sighed deeply in response. I must have gone crazy. Why did I agree to this? He pondered out loud. It wasn't all loss, was it? Countered Eugene. Fine. I get it, Malkuth said in a resigned tone. As her voice faded, Eugene glanced at the receding wind and asked, Tempest, you weren't lying because you didn't want to form a contract with Lady Malkuth, right? What do you take me for, Hamel? While I do find Malkuth el-Haya troublesome, I would never forsake the dignity of a spirit king by lying. Though Tempest's response was firm, Internally, the Spirit King harbored growing unease. Melkith El-Haya, as much as it pained him to admit, had an almost devilish talent for spirit magic. In just a few months, her capacity as a spiritist had expanded remarkably. The harsh yet pure desert played a pivotal part in stretching the bounds of her vessel. Eugene stood up while ignoring Tempest's sullen mood. He tested his healed body with a few jumps and stretches. "Moving well, I see," he commented. Satisfied with his smoothly functioning body prompted him to smile broadly at Christina. "I think you might be on par with Anise now," he praised wholeheartedly. "Not at all, Sir Eugene. I still have a long way to go," Christina said modestly while caressing the stigmata on her palm. Thanks to Eugene and Molin's relentless sparring, her healing magic had made incredible strides during their time in the cave. Strangely, the more familiar they became with each other's fighting styles, the more severe their injuries grew. Their attacks became sharper and more lethal with each passing as they refrained from holding back. "Hamel, are you planning to head out again?" Anise asked while squinting at Eugene. Eugene flinched instinctively at her words. He naturally stopped in the midst of his natural stride towards the cave's exit. I feel I'm on the verge of a breakthrough," said Eugene. "I understand that you are training to grow stronger and that it's necessary. I know I shouldn't stop you. However, don't you think resting a bit more today might be prudent, especially after almost dying?" suggested Anise. She appeared pretty displeased, yet as she admitted, she had no intention of hindering Eugene's progress. Still, the fact that he had narrowly escaped death made her wish he would opt for some respite. "It's fine," Eugene assured her with a shake of his head. "It's been a while since I've danced so close to death. That's exactly why I need this sharpened sense." Indeed, he had come close to death. Molin had long since stopped sparring with bare hands. Since Eugene's arrival in the cave, Molin had consistently wielded his axe in their battles. It was sparring only in words. The mere brush of Molin's axe brought the whisper of death each time. Eugene knew that a moment's lapse could lead to a fatal blow. Eugene sought this intensity and Molin obliged. Only such peril held meaning. If he could not completely surpass Molin's axes, anything less was insufficient for Eugene to reach the next level. Would his future foes be weaker than Molin? Unlikely. They would probably be far stronger than Molin, who, despite his monstrous strength, could not claim superiority over the likes of Noir Giabella or Gavid Lindman. If Eugene remained weaker than Molin, he could not hope to surpass the challenges ahead. If that were the case, it would be better for me to stay holed up in this mountain and ask Molin to fight in my stead, Eugene thought mockingly. Eugene could open the boundary of Lahanjar with his moonlight sword. Although it was impossible for him to immediately sense the emergence of the Nur, he could respond somewhat similarly if he scattered feathers of prominence throughout the mountain. It was an idle, useless thought. While Molin's strength was undeniable, his power was too straightforward. It possessed clear weaknesses. Even if he could handle Gavid, facing Noir's determined assault of mental attacks through unleashing the power of the demon eye of fantasy would leave Molin helpless. Moreover, Molin's mind had once been pushed to the brink of sanity by the Nur's poison. He was particularly vulnerable to such mental onslaughts. In the end, it was up to Eugene to become stronger. The several months of dancing on the edge of life and death with Molin's axe were not for naught. Eugene knew this better than anyone. Have I ever danced this close to death since my rebirth? Eugene wondered suddenly. It wasn't that he hadn't faced formidable enemies before. But the opponents Eugene had encountered, whether it was Barong, the demon who had compelled him to first unleash ignition, or Jagan, the beast of Revesta, neither had been stronger than Hamel. Even Uid, when possessed by the shadow spirit, and Edmund, who had been completely nullified by the moonlight sword, hadn't outmatched him. There had been only two beings who could be deemed stronger than Hamel, than Eugene himself. One was Ryzakia, the demon dragon. The other was the newly birthed demon king of fury, Iris. However, his battles with both of them had ended in a single encounter. Battles with Molin did not end with a single encounter. As long as Eugene or Molin didn't die, they could repeat their clash over and over again. Even if it took them to the brink of death, they could always rely on the healing of Christina and Anise. With each brush against death, I feel like I'm becoming sensitive to new sensations. I learned how to move my sword better to receive his axe and how to swing it to penetrate his defense, Eugene observed. He had thought there was nothing left to add to his combat senses. Now he knew it had been absurd arrogance. Although Hamel had indeed survived many battles in the past, what Eugene considered the extreme was not the absolute limit. He saw it not as engraving a known sensation but as discovering a new. It was a new discovery. He recalled Agaroth's divinity and intuition and blended both Hamel and Eugenie's experiences into one. Then he poured Hamel and Eugene into Agaroth's combat techniques. He fused everything in his mind to a sublime unity. Through this process over months he now was certain. I am growing stronger. He emerged from the cave. Molen greeted him with a grin as he rose from the ground and swung his left arm. That was close, Hamel, said Molen. Eugene had sustained broken limbs, but Molen had only injured his left arm. However, comparatively, Eugene felt the wounds he had inflicted were far graver. Although his limbs had been broken, they had still been attached. On the other hand, Eugene's blade had nearly severed Molen's arm. Had his muscles been just a bit less thick, I would have completely cut it off, Eugene thought as he gave Molen's left arm a look. Wouldn't that mean I had one? Eugene came to a conclusion in his mind and slung the holy sword over his shoulder. Since it's nearly evening, let's keep this session short, Eugene said. Agreed. Molen laughed heartily while hefting his axe. Christina, who had followed Eugene out, could hardly understand the emotion that allowed them to laugh off such brutal sparring once it was over. There's no need to understand, Christina. I too cannot fathom their madness, and Sienna wouldn't be able to either, said Anise. Lady Sienna. I wonder how she's doing. Christina said. You don't need to be concerned about that girl. Too many wizards follow Sienna, so she's probably sitting comfortably among her disciples in Aroth. What matters now is us, not Sienna, said Anise. Christina retorted. But sister, my miracles and the power of the stigmata are growing stronger. Sir Molen's arm was almost completely severed, but just now But Anise interrupted her with a shout. Christina, that is not what I am referring to. 3 months have passed since Sienna went to Aroth, and we've done nothing with Hamel. That's unavoidable. See, sister, we don't always need to be doing something, right? The time we're spending with Sir Eugene now has its own beautiful significance, Christina said haltingly. She crossed herself to banish the insidious desires clouding her mind while Anise heaved frustrated sighs. Meanwhile in Aroth, I want to become a goddess. The wise Sienna, a figure who could be considered the mother of all wizards of this era, sat alone in the high seat. Her chin was propped on her hand as she murmured to herself. Chapter 422, That 7. They had thought they had misheard. All lifted their heads in doubt, their ears questioning the voice. They were currently located on the highest floor of Akron in the Hall of Sienna. Gathered were the arch-wizards of Aroth, as well as the wise Sienna herself. Commander of Aroth's court wizards Tremple Vizardo. Red Tower Master Lovelian Sophies. Blue Tower Master Herodis Usland. Not only them but also the former Green Tower Master Generic Osman was present. However, what was astonishing was that they weren't the only ones present. Archwizards hailing from beyond Aroth were present in the hall as well. Once upon a time, only Aroth housed archwizards who had reached the 8th circle. However, as time passed, wizards belonging to other nations had also reached such a level. Court Wizard of Shimuan Maze Briar. Court Wizard of Kiel Harrington Carriage. Moreover, they were joined by Rhinian Bors, an arch-wizard who had long hidden herself from the world without spreading her name. It was nearly impossible for foreign wizards to enter Akron, regardless of their skill and renown. An exception had been made for Eugene years ago because he had practically been a novice in magic and also a descendant of the Lionheart family. But Maze and Harrington were court wizards from other nations. In addition, although Rhinian was registered in the guild, she had vanished from records for decades. Everyone had presumed her dead. The presence of these foreign wizards in Akron would have been unthinkable, yet Sienna had stormed into Abram and overturned the council. She had succeeded in negotiating entry into her hall, although they were still barred from other floors. Ha! The 7 archwizards gaped at Sienna. She sat steps above them on a high seat, lost in a vacant stare before sighing deeply. How does one become a goddess? She murmured. Was this a joke? Or was there another meaning hidden within? The one who blurted out such an absurd question was none other than the wise Sienna. There might be a profound truth about magic within her words. All but Lovelian were unfamiliar with Sienna's personality. The arch-wizards shared glances while pondering the magical significance of the word goddess, as mentioned by Sienna. Lady Sienna, you already possess the beauty, wisdom, and greatness of a goddess. It was Maze who broke the silence after much contemplation. Like most other wizards, Maze deeply revered Sienna. He had received personal advice from her on improving his signature and also had the opportunity to assist her with magic during the battle against the Demon King of Fury. The magical dagger of oath still remained embedded in Maze's heart from that time. I agree. If there is a goddess of magic in this world, it would undoubtedly be you, Lady Sienna. Stammering in agreement this time was the former Green Tower Master, Generic. After a humiliating defeat at the hands of Sienna, he retired from his position as a Tower Master. The duel had taken place in front of the citizens of Pentagon, and it had left the proud arch-wizard in disgrace, unable to even lift his head. He had intended to seclude himself after stepping down from his position as the Tower Master. However, Sienna had dragged him out of his mansion upon her return to Arath. Though she found his personality disagreeable and his signature mediocre at best, Generic was nonetheless an arch-wizard. Sienna believed she needed the perspectives of other arch-wizards to transcend the ninth circle. But I'm not really a goddess, Sienna muttered with a lackluster expression. She did not refute Maze and Generic's praises. She accepted the assessment of being a beautiful, wise, and great magical goddess as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Reinian could not help but marvel. He was thoroughly impressed by her demeanor. Reinian bores. She reached the 8th circle on her own while being in seclusion from the wizarding community at large. She was a hermit in her practice of magic. She had been a 6th circle wizard when she last updated her guild records, and since then she had self-taught her way to the status of an arch-wizard over 30 years of seclusion. She harbored no worldly desires. Fame and honor meant nothing to her. She had become an arch-wizard through solitary meditation and practice, and her only longing was to someday see the end of magic. Then she heard the news. The wise Sienna had returned to Arath. No one could be certain of her intentions, but the legendary archwizard had made an announcement to the archwizards across the continent. If you wish to create the next step in magic, come to Arath. How stirring a call it was. It wasn't the end of magic but rather the next step. Moreover, the words, "if you wish to create," immediately drove Reinian out of her seclusion. It meant that she could contribute to magic's next step alongside the wise Sienna, the creator of the circle magic formula and witchcraft, which was said to be the greatest, most significant of grimoires in all of magic's history. Lady Sienna, are you suggesting that your vision of magic's next step is to become a goddess? Reinian inquired respectfully. Her question caused a shift in the thoughts of the other archwizards. After a brief silence, Sienna nodded while tapping her fingers on the armrest. Based on the circle magic formula I've established, humans can only handle up to the 8th circle of magic, said Sienna. When Sienna first devised the circle magic formula 300 years ago, she segmented her mana and magic into 9 circles. It was the dawn of the circle magic formula, and now all magic was classified by circles. Yet no wizard since Sienna has reached the 9th circle. Even among the arch-wizards gathered here, the greatest wizards of this era, none had attained the 9th circle. I'm considered a 9th circle wizard because the system was based on me. In other words, the actual end you can reach with the circle magic formula is the 8th circle, continued Sienna. I suspected as much, Tremple responded. As the eldest among them, he had been the first to reach the 8th circle. Stroking his beard, he continued, there never was a 9th circle magic or spell in this world to begin with. 8th circle spells exist, albeit rarely, and most of that too was crafted by sages who ascended to the 8th circle after you, Lady Sienna. It feels almost ridiculous for a child like me to say this, but once I reached the status of an archwizard, learning and mimicking the spells of others seemed absurd, Harrington said with an awkward smile. He was the court wizard of Kiel and was the youngest of them all. The Blue Tower Master, Herodes, nodded in agreement. It was a given that a true archwizard should be capable of conjuring magic on the spot as the situation demanded. Archwizards had to immerse themselves in their own magic beyond the 8th circle and push themselves to the limit. That would result in what was known as their signature. Are you suggesting that the 9th circle we've been striving for is an illusion? Lovelian voiced his concern after a moment of contemplation. No, that's not it, Sienna firmly shook her head, dismissing the idea. Magic holds endless possibilities. Just as I pursue magic, magic pursues me in turn. The boundless nature of magic mirrors the boundlessness of a wizard's thoughts. It's about manifesting one's desires through mana. That is what magic is. Sienna raised her finger and drew in the air. Instantly, 9 circles materialized out of thin air with a shimmering sound. The 9th circle isn't an illusion. But think about it. As archwizards, is the 9th circle you seek just about adding another circle to your current realm? What wonder and awe does such a 9th circle attained in that manner hold? Questioned Sienna. The completion of the magic we pursue, mumbled Maze, his head nodding in realization. Sienna chuckled and flicked her finger playfully. That's an arrogant statement. There's no completion in magic. There shouldn't be. Why do you think that is? Asked Sienna. Because it leads to contentment, someone answered promptly. Right. If you think you've reached the end when it's not, imagining what comes next becomes difficult. The 9th circle. It's about what comes next in your current realm of magic, not simply about adding another circle, said Sienna. Lady Sienna, you are. Lovelian started before trailing off, his expression a mixture of bitterness and awe as he observed the 9 circles coalescing before him. That's why you've been pondering so deeply, he concluded. Instead of answering, Sienna let out a long sigh. Whoosh. The 9 circles merged into one, within which countless smaller circles appeared. The many circles interlocked, spun, and disappeared in a continuous cycle. I thought I had reached my limit, she confessed. Magic encompassed countless fields. To exaggerate a bit, it was possible that there existed a unique magic for every wizard in the world. 300 years ago, the magic that Sienna sought culminated in the completion of the circle magic formula. With that, she believed she had fully interpreted her own magic. Vermouth would no longer wage war against the Demon Kings after his promise. Her current self wasn't enough. If Vermouth was absent, she needed to fill that void with stronger magic. Sienna hadn't forgotten about exacting revenge for Hamel. If she had concluded her own magic with the circle magic formula, then it was time to move beyond. What she pursued and eventually created was the eternal whole, the zenith of the circle magic formula. She captured infinity through a perpetually reconfiguring and merging system of circles. The eternal whole is what I determined as the end of my magic. But it's not enough. It's woefully insufficient, admitted Sienna. The next in magic that a human can handle. Are you seeking to transcend humanity? Someone asked. A goddess. Maze clasped his hands together, his face awash with ecstasy. Lady Sienna, you are almost a goddess in your current state. If you really do become a goddess, I, Maze Briar, will give myself to you even though I have never devoted myself to a deity before, Maze declared solemnly. Let's stop with talks about the future. Give me your opinions on how I might become a goddess, said Sienna. It made one wonder if Sienna had intentions of founding her own religion. Reincarnted momentarily entertained the idea. A legendary hero turned into a goddess of magic, Sienna Meridian. Wizards from all over the continent would surely gather before her idol. The magic kingdom of Aroth would surely reform into a theocratic state, worshipping Sienna as their deity. A human transcending to become a god. A goddess. I've never even heard of such a thing, muttered Reincarnted while stealing glances at Sienna. With her stunning violet hair and emerald eyes that still shone with brilliance despite her contemplation, Reincarnted, despite being a woman herself, felt almost bewitched by Sienna's beauty. A god would not be bound by a human vessel, Reincarnted mused. We must first clearly define what magic beyond human capacity entails. Is it the body that cannot endure or the soul? Lovelian murmured. A wizard's circle resided near the heart, akin to a warrior's core. Though not a physical organ that would bulge out with the size of the circle, the collapse of a circle would deal direct damage to the wizard's heart. Employing magic beyond one's capacity could lead to one's circle and mana running amok, which could also physically harm the body. What if one forgoes the body and becomes a being of pure spirit? Someone suggested. How is that different from becoming a lich? Came a retort. It wouldn't be necromancy if powered by mana instead of dark power, Bender. Wait. Sienna interjected with a serious tone, cutting through the speculation. I have no intention of abandoning my body. I'm not even sure if that's the correct answer. Becoming a being of spirit in the end, would make me something akin to an angel brought forth by divine magic, wouldn't it? That would seem to be the case, came the hesitant reply. But, Lady Sienna, in higher magics, the body is more unstable and imperfect compared to the mind. Even if the mind can finely tune the magic, the body may fail to balance it, resulting in a backlash, someone reasoned. I haven't had such an issue. Never, Sienna stammered, her eyes darting around. It wasn't that she hadn't faced such issues. The human body, no matter how trained and fortified, was frail. On the other hand, mana, when manipulated through magic, could easily surpass human physicality depending on its application. High-level magic inevitably involved a high output of mana, and the human body sustained damage each time such magic was cast. No matter how precisely one constructed a formula and chanted an incantation, it was impossible to completely escape any stress to the flesh. Especially now, Sienna bore injuries not only to her body but also to her soul. The wounds inflicted by vermouth prevented her from maintaining the eternal whole for an extended duration. I might have lived for 300 years, but abandoning my body is too radical a proposition. And my body now, though you call it flesh, has been reconstituted down to the cellular level with mana, said Sienna. The burden of high-output mana on the body was the same for warriors. In their case, the body underwent a metamorphosis called rebirth through rigorous training of their core. They would become one with mana, and consequently the body would become reconstituted. Likewise, Sienna had reconstituted her body through magic. As such, unlike the gathered archwizards, she rarely felt the impact of mana output on her body. Still, she thought it was an opinion that could not be dismissed. If reaching beyond the ninth circle required abandoning the body, if becoming a pure spirit was necessary, I'd rather not. Sienna concluded. How dare you? Tremple's face suddenly contorted with anger amidst the heated debate on the magic to transform Sienna into a goddess. He clenched his fist as he looked out the window. Leave it be, Sienna spoke without even glancing outside, having noticed it long before. But Lady Sienna, Tremple started. Pretend you don't know. With a snort, Sienna flipped through the magic tome in front of her. Outside the top-floor window of Akron was a bat flapping its wings in the distance.